Hi, I'm Jerry Keehner. Welcome to my capstone presentation, Weaponizing the Good War, How Statecraft, Sanitized Memory, and the National World War II Memorial Legitimized the Global War on Terror. In an essay entitled, Why Do Contemporary Monuments Talk So Much?, Del Upton wrote, "Monuments always say more about the people, times, and places of their creation than they do about the people, times, and places they honor. And that's because memorials are basically what we can call collective memory identity projects. While memorializing an event, they simplify the complexities of history by using stereotypes familiar to the masses in order to define the historical event in a way that serves present-day needs. The National World War II Memorial, authorized in 1993, is one such collective memory project. In the 1990s, popular histories and media had created a lasting stereotype of World War II. It was a good war fought by the greatest generation. American politicians, wanting to respond to the Vietnam Veterans Memorial's negative portrayal of American military action, embraced this stereotype in their new memorial. Thus, motivated by a post-Vietnam desire to rehabilitate the military's social standing, 1990s political stakeholders engineered the National World War II Memorial to reinterpret the 1940s as an era of national unity and unilateral American triumph. By utilizing a sanitized, triumphalist aesthetic that actively suppressed the profound racial fractures and physical traumas of the era, the memorial deliberately weaponized a collective memory of World War II by equating honorable citizenship with unquestioning military sacrifice and legitimized 21st century interventions like the global war on terror. For over 4 decades, the only memorial to World War II in Washington, D.C. was the 1954 United States Marine Corps Iwo Jima Memorial. Typical of the Cold War era, this memorial exemplified the heroic soldier advancing American democratic values. This striking memorial provided a triumphalist baseline for American military memory. In 1982, the Vietnam Veterans Memorial dismantled that baseline with its abstract, anti-heroic design. It exemplified themes popular in the late 70s and early 80s, especially victimization and anti-war distrust. Finally, in 2004, the National World War II Memorial was dedicated. This memorial was designed to close the book on Vietnam-era angst and take center stage away from the Vietnam Memorial on the National Mall. How it was able to do that is the story of the rest of this presentation. It began during Ronald Reagan's first term as president. Standing in France on the 40th anniversary of D-Day, Reagan delivered his famous speech, lionizing the boys of Pointe-du-Hoc. While his praise of the heroes who helped free a continent was true, he communicated it in a way that the facts became, as Andrew Bosovich describes, suffused with nostalgia. To understand why this nostalgia took root so effectively in the 1980s, we must look at Deborah Ramsey's analysis of collective memory. Ramsey demonstrates that during this decade, American memory of the war became inextricably linked to a rising public consciousness of the Holocaust. By framing World War II primarily as a moral crusade against ultimate evil, American media and politicians established a rigid binary of absolute good versus absolute evil for the war, and this manufactured moral certainty provided the perfect cultural antidote to the moral ambiguity of the Vietnam era. In the late 90s, political stakeholders weaponized this new cultural certainty to manipulate the memorial's site selection process, securing the Rainbow Pool location at the exact center point of the National Mall. This was a deliberate move to elevate the World War II Memorial in importance above the Vietnam Memorial. J. Carter Brown, chairman of the Commission of Fine Arts, admitted as much, stating that placing it anywhere else would have relegated it to a mere footnote to the Vietnam Memorial. Even more than just superseding Vietnam, decision makers chose this site to link World War II veterans directly to Washington and Lincoln. The inscription at the entrance explicitly welcomes visitors in the presence of Washington and Lincoln to honor the World War II generation. By physically claiming the same status as the founding and preserving of the nation, the memorial cements World War II as the most important event of the 20th century. As we move to consider how the memorial was actually designed, we have to acknowledge that it engages in the suppression of history. Collective memory projects regularly simplify complex historical realities, often by suppressing or omitting those parts of history that don't align with its current goals. One of the most notable omissions here is that no other nations are identified. Around the fountains are inscribed the names of Pacific and European battles, but not those of America's allies or enemies. Even the quote from President Roosevelt's Pearl Harbor speech neatly avoids naming Japan. Erica Doss states that the memorial thus implies that the UN single-handedly won a war against some unknown enemy. The memorial also suppresses all evidence of division in World War II. We know that African American and Japanese American troops served with great distinction during the war, but they were doing so despite facing high levels of racism at home. The memorial doesn't mention any of this. It doesn't mention the Double V campaign. It doesn't mention Japanese American internment. It doesn't even acknowledge the presence of minority servicemen. It only portrays a nation perfectly united to fight against evil. The design itself highlights this unity. The semicircle of 56 pillars representing the states and territories during the 1940s surrounding the memorial, linked by bronze ropes, is intended to symbolize the nation coming together in common cause with no divisions among them. Finally, the designers of the memorial anonymized death to make sacrifice palatable. Unlike the Vietnam Memorial, there is no necrology wall on which individual soldiers are named. Though the original design of the memorial included a somber poem about dead soldiers, the Commission of Fine Arts decided that it was not celebratory enough. Instead, there is simply a wall of 4,048 anonymous gold stars fronted by the inscription, "Here we mark the price of freedom." Kristen Haas said of this, "They chose a platitude that approaches sacrifice without significantly engaging with loss. They chose a memory that makes war deaths palatable rather than palpable." All the symbolism in the National World War II Memorial expressed and confirmed what was already a cultural belief, that World War II was a good war, a time of moral certainty in which the United States fought against evil and prevailed because of the unity and moral uprightness of the nation. Before the memorial design was complete, this cultural belief had been expressed and strengthened in popular media. In 1993, the United States Holocaust Memorial Museum opened and Steven Spielberg's Schindler's List premiered. As scholar Lester Friedman argues, these representations offered a communal moral catharsis, universalizing the Holocaust and cementing the binary concept that World War II was a war of absolute good versus absolute evil. Then, Tom Brokaw's 1998 book, The Greatest Generation, provided the overarching vocabulary that would represent these veterans, calling them the greatest generation ever produced by any society. Released that same year, Spielberg's Saving Private Ryan enhanced this collective memory. Its patriotic fervor replaced the cynicism that engulfed the country after Vietnam, making war seem purposeful again. Historian John Bodnar notes that the film cast patriotic sacrifice as a frame that completely overshadowed trauma. Spielberg's films effectively replaced the moral ambiguity of Vietnam with absolute moral certainty, celebrating soldiers as decent men sacrificing themselves for something greater. The final media offering that locked this in place was HBO's $125 million miniseries Band of Brothers, which reaffirmed the notion of the American soldier as the ultimate defender of democracy. Thus, by the time the memorial was being finalized, popular culture had already created a massive transmedia memorial in the minds of the American public. This relentless 1990s cultural phenomenon reveals a stark contrast with the environment that produced the Vietnam Veterans Memorial. The Vietnam Memorial's abstract anti-heroic design reflected a culture still grappling with a deep distrust of the government and the moral ambiguity of modern war. By contrast, the World War II Memorial was engineered for a 1990s public whose memory had already been thoroughly pre-programmed by Brokaw and Spielberg to view American military intervention as inherently noble and liberating. By capitalizing on this manufactured cultural consensus, one that had successfully cured the nation's Vietnam syndrome, stakeholders ensured the memorial on the National Mall would function not as a site of historical reflection, but as a monument to triumphalist American power. On the day it was dedicated, President George W. Bush explicitly used the memorial to connect the good war memory of World War II to the ongoing global war on terror. More than a year after he had proclaimed mission accomplished aboard the USS Abraham Lincoln, the war was still in progress and public opinion had become less supportive over that time. Bush used the opportunity of the Memorial Day dedication to support the global war on terror. He listed a continuum of American military action from the Revolutionary War through World War II to the current war on terror, saying, The members of our military have built a tradition of honorable and faithful service. He described the servicemen of World War II who fought to preserve civilization as the pride of our nation. He then pivoted to speak about the current situation. Today, all who wear the uniform of the United States are serving at a crucial hour in history, and each has answered a great call to serve our nation on the front lines of freedom. Bush was doing exactly what Andrew Bosovich criticized when he explained how war myths create seamless narratives of American soldiers as liberators of the world, even if what they are doing is more akin to imperial policing than national defense. Using the dedication of the World War II memorial, Bush mapped the memory of World War II onto the global war on terror. This allowed him to use the revered legacy of the greatest generation to discourage the public from questioning what many were calling modern imperial policing. As a final demonstration of the purpose of the memorial, architect and designer Friedrich and Florian's words must be considered. In the memorial guidebook, he is quoted as saying, "The essence of the memorial is for future generations. What we want to tell young people now, and 100 and 200 years from now, is that there was a generation of Americans that stood up and defended our ideals and principles when challenged. When they stand in front of that field of stars, we want them to shiver and say, if that happens again, I will do the same thing." Courage and patriotic sacrifice are the clear goals here. Above all, the memorial is about unity, the sanitized version of 1940s national unity that never truly existed, at least in the extremes proclaimed by the memorial's designers. Without understanding what citizens are being called to unite behind, however, it becomes too easy to assume that whatever the government has called the military to do must be right. Thus, the manufactured memory of the war, a revised history of the war, becomes weaponized as the driver of future unquestioning sacrifice. St. Florian's goal can be used to accomplish good. It can also be used to manipulate the citizenry. This reflects many modern American interactions in the world today. Since World War II, American policymakers have been the main leaders, especially among Western democracies, with the political will to use military action, even preemptive military action, as a primary tool of foreign policy. Thus, the messaging of the memorial is a clear example of creating a collective memory project that serves a present national agenda. Despite the claim of the memorial's National Park Service superintendent that the memorial provides a complete record of World War II in and of itself, it is not a museum that explains history in a rigorous and accurate way. It is a collective memory project that uses a specifically crafted memory of World War II to encourage patriotism. The designers and stakeholders did not intend to project a complete and accurate picture of the war. Rather, they engineered the memorial from its location to its design to provide reasons for citizens to continue to support military action by the United States up to and including, as the inscription before the Wall of Stars implies, paying the price of freedom. As a profound exercise in statecraft, the National World War II Memorial reveals how collective remembering can be manipulated to serve the needs of the present rather than the truths of the past. Seeking an antidote to the fractured public consensus left by the Vietnam War, stakeholders built a monument that strips away the era's racial injustices and the palpable horror of combat. What remains is a highly curated narrative disguised as historical fact. By codifying in stone an illusion of absolute national unity and unquestioned moral certainty, the memorial effectively mandates blind patriotic sacrifice, providing the justification necessary to sustain America's ongoing military interventions around the world. Thank you.